sure fun to watch. We love what we do, we're drinking every brew. Man, we talk some shit, but we're telling the truth. Yeah, we're the Scotchy Bourbon Boys, raisins in hell and making some noise. Yeah, we're the Scotchy Bourbon Boys, we're here to have fun and we hope you enjoy. We're here to have fun.
Welcome, everybody, to the Scotchy Bourbon Boys' second ever barrel pick, which this barrel pick,
oh my gosh, yes,
fucking amazing.
And the first for Supe Nash and the Scotchy Bourbon Boys.
But this Scotchy Bourbon Boys barrel pick was special because we are talking about Alan Bishop
of Spirits of French Lick Distillery and Winery in West Baden Springs, Indiana, which is our sponsor of the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. Yes, we went there. A group of us.
It was amazing.
Yes.
We pulled in 10 people. CT,
whiskey,
rock. No, whiskey didn't come to that.
Oh, no, it didn't.
Roxy, CT, Supe Nash, myself, Aaron, and Josh came down. It was
James.
James came down. It was an amazing barrel pick with Alan Bishop. Now, Alan was hungover, and he explained to me that he couldn't believe what happened on this barrel pick. But we had Brooklyn, and then also Lauriline, Doty, and it was an amazing pick. We ended up being able to pick from 3 Lee W. Sinclairs, 3 William Daltons, and
Matty Gladden.
And 2 Matty Gladdens.
2 Matty Gladdens, that's right.
It wasn't hard for me because when I went there, I knew what I wanted from the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. I wanted the William Dalton Wheated. And there was a barrel that was exceptional. And this is something
Matty Gladden that was exceptional. But
this is Alan Bishop, head alchemist at Spirits of French Lick. Be on the lookout for a brand new bottled and bond Solomon Scott rye whiskey, made from a mash composed of 65% rye, 35% corn, and 5% victory malt. This 5-year-old 100 proof rye whiskey is a throwback to early 1800s style rye whiskeys of the Ohio Valley. Named after the legendary Daisy Spring Mill distillery owner turned moonshiner Solomon Scott of Paoli, Indiana. Remember, drink responsibly and never drink and drive.
Dant Crossing, Gethsemane, Kentucky. Timeless hospitality that stirs the spirit. Dant Crossing is a one-of-a-kind destination for unforgettable weddings, memorable corporate events, day trips, and weekend getaways. The pastoral campus is anchored by Log Still Distillery and includes an amphitheater that seats 2,000, a 12-acre lake for fishing and unique lodging options, creating an immersive experience that's rooted in the community and culture of our little slice of Kentucky. More attractions will open soon at Dant Crossing, including our 21,000 square foot distillery, which we will have the ability to produce 15,000 barrels of spirit each year, a network of wooded walking trails, fully functional private train depot, farm-to-table restaurant, and the Legacy, a premier wedding and events venue. Whether you're looking to host an event, book a stay, or reserve a tasting, we're ready to welcome you. Learn more at dantcrossing.com.
For your logo on there. Yep. Yeah. That's a fun process. So, I think we're going to be having you guys down to get that. I don't know what that.
No, we'll talk about that. We'll get it all and get it all arranged.
Yeah. But so everything's bottled at barrel strength, and we've got some of our unique stuff is aging in there too, in our finishing barrels, and that's kind of where some of that stuff hangs out for a while. But, so along the wall there is our sherry. It's a sherry style dessert wine. We can't call it sherry because that's a regional designation, but we do an what's the process? I always want to say Olorosa. It's an Olorosa style sherry, but the process is I forget.
That's okay. It's wine. It's okay.
Wine. You start with the first batch, and it takes like 4 years to get it going. You start with the first batch, and then second and third, and then you bottle part of the first batch and use the second batch to fill up the first batch, and so on. And so you manage consistency over time, kind of like with the bottles of bourbon. Yeah.
All right.
All right, so we're gonna pull up this here. I can sit right here next to you.
What?
Where do you want to sit? Tell me where you want. I think we got 10 now.
On the end,
Yeah, it'll be on the end. So I can.
Yeah. This will be good.
This is awesome. Put Amzie right there.
All foul stuff, so like apple brandy, anything with oats, anything with buckwheat, etc. This room doesn't do well with rye in particular, or anything with 70% more corn. It's a little bit more up and down. So the other warehouses work best for that stuff versus down here. That's why we have them divided up the way that we do. But this room is actually really fantastic too, because we get some complexity out of this room that I don't get from the other warehouse a lot of times, and if this room never gets so cold that it stops aging. So if it's 4 years, it's aged the entirety of that 4 seasons, where it's never getting cold enough in here that it stops aging.
You've been in this room before. Right. So like, okay, what is the appreciate? Yeah, the funds. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but we don't know exactly what it's at right now until it's bottled.
Okay.
I could go grab my little digital hydrometer and we can check.
Out of curiosity, I want to say about 107.
And make sure you get that with water, clean it out good.
You know, real quick shameless plug for everybody. I looked over here and I saw some of the brandy barrels. They're in the running for best craft brandy distillery on the USA Today thing. So make sure you go vote every day.
Yes,
I have
yes,
on that.
yes.
So
You're welcome to
You are
right
supposed to
over there on the bottom.
So I'm looking forward to this.
We're right in between 1 and 2 every day, so yeah, every vote counts.
Yeah, I saw it. One time it was 2, the next time it was 1, then 1, 2, 1.
Not every day. Jim Eric, our brand manager at Johnson Brothers, our Indiana distributor, sent out like 100 text messages to all the guys at Johnson Brothers and like bugging them to vote every day.
You can vote every day. Yeah,
Out of their craft distillery.
Yeah,
That's a, what is that called? An
That's how-
non-distilling, an NDA?
So yeah, basically non-distilling craft.
NDP. Yeah, non-distilling.
I'm trying really hard. I'm not calling these people craft.
I've just been doing it myself. Yeah, well, that's the old name,
Right?
but I mean, it has
Craft distillers.
craft distillers. You can't even call them distillers. Distilling has to be, right? That was, Randy got a little bit in trouble for the festival because everybody, the Kentucky distillers couldn't sell the bottles, but like Pursuit International and them, they thought they were going to be able to sell, and you had to let them know at the last minute. The law doesn't allow you, if you're not a distiller, to sell from the booze, right? And they were like pissed. Yeah. But he's like, I didn't do this on purpose. Right? No, not even like it's like when you know you're breaking the rule, you know you're breaking the rule.
Which one are you guys tasting right now, by the way?
The 916.
Dalton.
Oh, okay.
So,
All right. I heard Lee, I heard Maddie, and then I heard Dalton. I'm like, wait, what's happening here? Yeah. Yeah.
what is it?
Yeah.
Stop the press.
That's the most traditional mash bill that we do. That's basically the old 88 sticks of mash bill. It's like 70 corns, 20 wheat, 10% caramel malt. 2 different yeast strains. So we divide the mash into 2 600-gallon batches. Day 1, we're using a strain that we propagate ourselves and pulls out the very grain forward sort of profile that we're after for the grain idea. And then day 2, we use one of 3 different brand yeasts depending on what we're running. That's where you get some of those fruity notes and some of those sometimes eucalyptus notes actually come from the yeast that we propagate ourselves. And all number 2 charred oak barrel, no 3, no 4, all number 2.
So 107.3. 107.28. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said when you were walking there. I said I'm guessing about 107.
Honey. You know what?
That's
What's pissing me off lately is I'm getting like
Terrible
honey
sweet
graham
food.
cracker shit, like golden grams. Like that's the development part of where my palate is right now.
And you get a lot of that off of weed anyways like that.
Well, right, but it's like all of a sudden just and as you go, sometimes you're just like on to certain flavors. Sometimes you're tasting tons of chocolates, and then other times you're it just. And right now, everything I taste, I'm just getting the graham cracker and the honey. But the sweetness on the front, and then for a 107, I got no palate shock today. Maybe it's just that I've drank 9 or 7 straight days in a row now, so maybe that's why there's no more palate shock. But
Yeah.
So, barrels, how did the cold weather affect the barrel aging in the coming months? Like,
It's not the cold that does it. It's the humidity
okay.
that does it. It depends on whether or not you're evaporating alcohol or you're evaporating water. So down here we're evaporating water. We're evaporating
like you have complete control of that range, right? For the most part.
down to
Yeah.
I mean, we don't think it stays so.
That's what it stays. Right. Because of you technically do, because the distiller in the wintertime, if you're distilling, it's heating things up.
Right.
I mean, this doesn't get like below 0.
No,
it's not open to
Right.
Are we ready to
Jealous
try the
of
next
salt.
one?
yes.
This one will be barrel 450.
Or not barrel.
Yes, barrel.
Yeah, I like the
Yes.
Out of there.
Barrel 450, and this was barrel on March 9th of 2017.
What y'all think about that as a start off?
Good.
This one's 5 years, actually.
This is old.
I agree. 4. Like what?
There we go. Okay. Yeah, I'm very inconsistent with my pours. I'm sorry.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, so I saw your show with Amzie. Bourbon on the Banks.
This is a 5 year. The other one was 4.
Is this where you say?
Right, the first one was 4.
Oh, no, it's fine. Actually, and I enjoyed seeing Diane in person because I've been talking to her. This one is.
Yeah, to see that, actually that pulled off really nice. I have not promoted that on YouTube because I was going to wait to promote it after the Kentucky Bourbon Festival and then hit it to get some more views.
Yeah.
I just put it up. I got it up there, it's there for people, but then I'm going to promote it and then it'll get,
Yeah, I meant to share it. I forgot. I'll do that today. But, so you're going to be at Bourbon on the Banks?
We are coming to Bourbon on the Banks. No, we don't have we're not like Kentucky Bourbon Festival. We're like have a podcast. But there, Amzie has made it so that we come down and he's taking care of us.
Oh, nice. We'll be there too.
Yeah,
So-
I know.
Did we get some
Yeah.
cash tickets to Diane since on?
No,
Oh, yeah.
I haven't even got tickets.
Okay, I'll make sure.
I mean, it's like we haven't talked.
Make sure I have your email address and then she'll actually send you the link just to download.
I mean, my email address is really easy. It's Scotchy Bourbon Boys at gmail.com. That's it.
Everything. The website,
Yeah.
Scotchy Bourbon Boys.
Everything. It's
So,
thus, yeah.
so do we get to pop by and like plug our stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, for sure. Coming on board podcast.
Oh, yeah, and definitely even that. But like I said, when we come down,
Yeah.
like I said, promoting, we can just take it to another level. You guys have been our sponsor from the beginning. You know, Alan was like, yeah, it's a whatever. We're gonna. We appreciate everything Alan does, and we appreciate everything you guys do, and so we'll just stay right on. All right. Yeah, 100%.
This one's in that 110.9 proof.
Oh my God, that's
110.9 right now.
Nope. I suspect that these were done the same way that they always are. You just randomly pick barrels, right?
Yeah. But usually,
Just you're that good.
sometimes I'll find one that's 5 years or something.
What?
And I'll try and put that one in the middle because the other two are real close in age. So we'll taste the oddball out in the middle.
Not really good.
The next one will be, yeah.
You are fucking.
It's a lot more complex.
Giving you the last one, but it's not quite real. I'll find it, right? That's what it's.
Hey, I got to touch the motorcycle once.
Did you? Oh my God. You don't know where, does she know where that was gonna go? You said you got to touch the Undertakers, and then I'm like, what is she talking about?
This
And then it was a motorcycle, and I'm like, oh God.
It was pretty cool.
I guarantee it. I've never got to meet the Undertaker.
I get so much caramel on that nose.
And then Nick Foley several times.
He was one of those guys that, like, you know that he is trying really hard to be intimidating, but he just was so nice.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
But I was
he
also a
has
child. So,
played that character for 30 plus years and not break the character.
right.
What
I
is that?
remember seeing Kane's face for the first time when I was younger and I was terrified. I thought that his face was scarier than that.
Yeah. You know, early on with the Undertaker, he literally had to play that character so often that when him and Paul Bear were traveling together, they actually traveled in a hearse.
Really nice.
They had to go from town to town in a hearse.
That's amazing.
So, where they were doing that interview with you, they were talking about that. Is that what that where they told that?
Yeah. Did they ever hook up with the grave digger and then travel in the grave digger?
Oh, no.
No, that would be a feat.
You make that happen for the Scotchy Bourbon Boys. I'll be on that one.
That's the kind of thing the government just won't let happen.
Now you've thrown down
You
the,
can't
throw
create
the
power
gauntlet
like
down for Jeff now. Throwing it down.
Oh my God. I got that from Wilderness Trail last time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, that might work. So
It's definitely a lot more fun, so you want to be
it's my story.
Right.
When we do barrel bashing on the podcast, that's what I use now.
More
It's
like-
a bottle.
more like
It sounds
dark
much
fruit.
more like
It's
a
like
barrel.
Yeah, some kind of dark stuff.
But when I was there on the Barrel Bourbon Festival, we were allowed
More
to
like
do
a
one thing on the
super
gift shop.
dark cherry.
That was like
Bitter. It's more of a bitter.
And then I had a couple T-shirts, and Macaulay's like, you know, I'm gonna have to charge you for those T-shirts. I'm like, as long as you don't charge me for them.
I think he told us to go pick out something as well, but yeah, I think he specified it was a shirt, but we were also.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It happens there at Wilderness Trail, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's like the tart of a pineapple or a mango, but the dark is more of like a dark port or a dark cherry wine. It's like, like a dark fruit. Yeah,
That's what it is.
almost like
It's like I wanted it, I couldn't have it, at least that's what
I'm getting butterscotch finish for the first time in my whole
the finish is nicer on this one than the last one.
I love the finish. Which one?
The last
So
one
you're
didn't
gonna
have
let me
much
go?
finish, it just was dry.
Do you have any ones?
This one has kind of
The finish, just the finish.
They're all.
This one has a more liquor.
Oh, really? Yes, it's like that's what's like.
I don't know, there's like some kind of fruit.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're ready to dump them, then you pick, and then you just go through them.
Like a Cheerio.
Oh, look what I wrote.
Mess up the dome.
But it's not my super favorite.
I was
See,
trying
that's
to
not my
read a
favorite
profile, sitting there trying to figure out what got
I pulled out 40 of them.
I wrote Cheerio.
Never decide that you want to mix the mash bills. For a couple of years. Actually takes some flavor.
But this finish is like really nice. This one has a really nice.
That's all you need.
Right. I love it. I love this.
What you like to hear?
All right, really.
Like what your tasting notes are. What kind of were you getting off the nose? And yeah.
So a lot of spice, like a bergamot mint, like a citrusy mint. Some vanilla.
Like a dark
I get on the nose.
A lot of
On this
spice.
one, I got a lot more sharpness. On the first one. But then
You say it was honeysuckle, but it had more punch.
Okay.
So he did the front end of the first one was very honey, golden Grammy, but this one I start to get like when he's talking about the honey starts, but it goes so fast to the finish, and the finish for me is butterscotch,
Okay.
and then I don't give a shit about anything else. That's kind of how it comes down. It's just like I taste that butterscotch.
Just a little bit of light.
Yeah.
Long.
Do we want to compare it to the third?
Yeah. Let's hit
That four characters is
Yeah.
interesting. So that shows up every once in a while. For me, it's like a light
And
jazz.
it was
Yeah.
barreled on.
Yes.
And I think
February of
it's
18.
that brandy yeast that brings that jasmine in.
2.5 years.
It does show up in the
I didn't write down the number of the gal.
Very light, it's just right at the beginning. And then I get these other flavors that are coming through.
Every once in a while, you can see a player that's straight jasmine.
And what was the one that you're
February of 18.
I'm just gonna say.
So about 4.5 years. And this one is 105.92.
Critical of it.
110.9.
So,
and you like to taste it.
I love some player, but I drink so much of that natural in my life.
That's literally every.
And the apple brand. The apple brand is the brand.
Oh yeah, no shit. It's got that sugar, that extra sugar. I mean, I understand what it
Right, you gotta
does.
get your nose around it.
It's also distilled in beer.
What number is it?
This is 961.
How
But
did
it
you
was
vanilla?
105 something.
Nice.
Oh, do you remember when that
It is nice to smell like vanilla.
So the last one with caramel, so you know that's not hanging out in there, right?
It might have been, they might have kept theirs high.
But that's more, the nose is more similar to the first one.
I know one of them.
Yeah. Since you're on this
It's
table,
much more like the first.
That might have been the first.
for the people with that you know, we're gonna try. So the state of Ohio, we're not doing this for the state of Ohio. In the state of Ohio, I talk to them, as long as I don't like post it everywhere, like good roots, then all of them are like big in barrel picking. So if I go to this barrel picking, and I'm just not gonna put it in the Scotchy. I have a Scotchy Bourbon Boy group that did the barrel picking. Usually I can go there, but I'm just not gonna post it all over the internet. So that it's not all there because no, we're gonna buy it right out. And that's way. Actually, like this way, I. Yeah, the other way, I put it through Ohio. I have to sell it the way they want to sell it, but they want to sponsor me for $600. Yeah. So that's like I don't want to fuck that up. Right. Absolutely. This one to me is very true.
Oh yeah, I just want to know it's the first thing. It's like vanilla extract. Hey, Alan.
Oh my God.
Yeah, more like marshmallow on the Dalton.
On the Dalton, it's 70% corn, 20 wheat, and 10% caramel.
What's the last one?
Caramel malt. So we use a lot of different brewers' malts. Everything that you'll taste today is going to have an alternative malt in it. We use some distillers' malt as well, but I like brewers' malts because they bring a new dimension to things. So this is the most traditional mash bill that we make. It's obviously the old 18th century distillery mash bill. But you can tell it's switched up, not only since pot still, not still filter, etc., but that caramel malt really adds a different sort of thing to it. So when you get on, say, Weller, Larceny, or any of those guys, right? It's basically the same mash bill. So.
Everything I didn't like about
So the Weeder or the Dalton and the Decent Blair both have caramel malt.
Doesn't have that.
Take more coffee, Jesus Christ.
The first one I didn't even really pick it up, but this one, I mean the second one I did, but this one really,
That'll be a good one.
really prominent.
I hate the Morning Glory with passion because it has like a Reese's Pieces thing going on, like a peanut butter chocolate thing.
Yes.
And I have a very distinct memory of being like 5 years old and being sick, and I was in the back of my mom's car, and she gave me Reese's Pieces, and I threw up everywhere. And I cannot drink that bourbon. Like if I have to go on a podcast and taste that, it's a problem.
So you can't watch ET, can you?
No. No. Put it on a show, and I thought for sure that he was going to destroy it because it is buckwheat. He notoriously hates buckwheat. When he drank it, he literally goes, "Well, that's the closest thing to a good buckwheat I've ever had." And I was like, "All right, I'll take that." Yeah.
It's right here.
What's that?
This is Poachine, the Whiskey Witch.
Okay.
Pulling this for you to get to try. Those guys. So there's two different ones that you guys got to try. Though. There's used oak and there's new oak, and they are night and day.
Wow, she's good at that.
Good?
Yep.
Yeah, I always forget that that's high proof too. It's like 120.
Hit that hammer.
Hold my thumb. I'm struggling today.
I can't tell which one's used and new
Oh,
anymore.
I just pulled the same. I thought you needed more of.
Oh no!
Perfect.
Well, now you got enough to go around for everybody.
Distributed, yes.
No, I
Make sure
want
I get one.
Huh?
I need one. I need one. Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll do that.
My building. I love.
Look at the power in that forearm.
I'm going really forearm. Oh.
Where does that go? What?
It's because it's so airtight.
Just like drilling a hole in it.
Yep.
That's how you do it.
Yeah.
It's gonna go right out on you.
Spray all over the place.
Oh, there it is.
Thumb on it.
Ready?
Thumb on it.
Yeah.
He's got it. He's got it.
Maybe.
Oh, that was good.
Yes.
And that's a whiskey witch. Yep. So this is. I guess we should tell the whole group. Yeah, I know. Okay.
I was just gonna make you drink it all. I'm actually in a movie where you make me drink all of it.
Oh, right.
And then I fall over.
And then you fall over, yes. But slow, the slowest fall in the world.
Yeah,
It was very.
And then you all put me in a chair, and it was good after that. I got to watch you blow up a barrel. Well, or almost.
Yeah, eventually.
Well, I think the last one, did that barrel actually blow up, or did it just explode outside the barrel?
It flew up, but it didn't go as.
Yeah,
Like what we wanted it to.
So I don't know if you just want to pass that around and let them pour it in our glasses, or we'll do the used oak.
There's my glass there.
So you guys are going to get to try something really unique here. This is something that is not like a mainline product for us. We do it with people that we've done a lot of barrels with. So it's kind of like a secret character is what I call it, right? It's almost like in a video game. You have to work for it.
blend is going to be
So
more oaky
this
than
is
honey, right?
a wheat, oat, and
not
smoked
a
malt
cigar blend.
whiskey. And it's based on whiskey that would have existed in Ireland and Scotland prior to Irish whiskey and Scottish whiskey. It's based on poachine is what it's based on. So the smoke that's in there is actually peat from northern Indiana. And we had that actually smoked up at Sugar Creek Malt in Indiana. So the malt is smoked with peat from northern Indiana. It's
What it almost smells like smoked peat. it's
Yeah.
because
What is peat from northern Indiana? What actually is it? It's
Deciduous
sheep
trees.
shit?
It would been like
Sheep
deciduous
shit?
trees.
Oh,
No.
No, okay.
it's not like it's not Scottish peach
Yes.
or peat that is 5,000-year-old sheep shit.
Right. And so this version of it is the used oak version, but what we did is we took it and we put it originally into once used Copper and King's great brandy barrels because we wanted to have some of that great brandy characteristic because that's what they were trying to imitate with poaching back in the day. They loved brandy in Ireland and Scotland, but they couldn't afford to import it. So they would try to make their whiskeys taste like brandy where they could. We didn't add anything to it at all, but we blended those barrels together after 4 years and put them into a mixture of once used Lee Sinclair barrels and New American Oak No. 2 char barrels to get that kind of flavor out of it. So there's no botanicals in there, although your palate's going to pick up on botanicals. Like on that used oak, you'll get a lot of lemongrass, or I get a lot of lemongrass. But there's nothing added to it to get that flavor. It's just the yeast itself.
So who is that from?
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's setting about 120 proof, 25
That's
proof,
one of the
somewhere
groups
around
that
there.
will move barrel in
And just like a drop of water in there, really
Will activate it.
that smoke.
Dude.
Yeah.
Wow. How's that not already? How have you not bottled that? That should be. You're still waiting.
No, dude, it's a special thing. Like the only people that it goes out to are accounts that have bought a lot of barrels from us. Like then we give them access to it. It's like a hidden character in a video game, right? You have to almost like earn getting a barrel of that, and that makes it more special because not just anybody can get it. You know what I mean? My God, is that delicious? It's really good.
Wow. See, this is one that I think that the nose is a bit deceitful.
It is.
Because it doesn't taste the way it smells.
Yeah.
At
I
all.
agree.
I hate deceitful noses.
It keeps you on your toes, huh?
Yeah.
The palate and the nose are both great, but they don't match up at all. Nope, I do like them. I like the nose and.
What do you think, Martin?
I like it. I like the one that was in the finished barrel better than the unfinished barrel. The finished barrel, I think, took a little bit of the edge off of it and made it a little bit more sweeter and took a bite off the spice just to make it pleasurable.
Let's not say
this one, the nose doesn't match up with it, and I think that the spice and the licorice flavor is just a little bit more overpowering on this one and all, and that takes away just a little bit, but both of them are very good and great taste.
Loves the grain, and you can taste the grain. You pick out the caramel that most whiskey lovers love, but at the same time, he has that Indiana profile. And you guys, you never want to. You don't have to compete against caramel, big, huge Kentucky distilleries. You want to set that, and he's doing that, and then pull that history of Indiana out of there. So he is basically doing what most distilleries are doing, and they come up with fake type shit. He researched the shit out of it and makes sure it's what it is, and then he's putting Indiana on the map. You guys aren't northern or southern Indiana or northern Kentucky enough where you still have that, but what he does, I mean, from the start, that was something that was unique. When we first started, he's the one that turned us on to that. And it's just but that was at a time craft distilleries, they were all getting bad names because they were trying to put out stuff too young. And then he put that bottled in bond out, and it's just delicious whiskey. So, say it again.
Amanda Palmer, retake. Take
Amzie, action. Go, Amzie. Say
Shut
it.
up, Amzie losing. I'll fight you right now over my mud fossil honor. Anyways, so the what you're about to try is it's called Hindustan Falls. Probably not saying that the right way, but it's in Dawson. Thank you, people, for being a part of Indiana. So it's named after a town that is on the Doty family farm, or was on the farm. It was an abandoned town. where we grow our corn. So the corn that this is made out of is, it's called Amanda Palmer. It's a corn I've bred myself over about 15 or 16 years. It's a cross of 150 plus different heirloom and open pollinated corns. Basically every time a diaspora left Oaxaca, Mexico, I tried to find a representation of that corn and fold it back into southern corn belt dent corns, and then start selected for organic agriculture with specific emphasis on distillation. So it's multicolored, it's all different colors. It's dent corn, it's blue, red, yellow, a little green, a little purple, etc. There's a lot of Tuscano, Caribbean style corn in there as well, which is plenty, and it has a higher percentage of amino acids that are soluble in water and fat and distill over in pot still distillation. So this is the most basic mash bill we do. It's 80% corn because we really want the focus to be on the corn in particular, and it's 10% rye, and then it's 10% distiller's malt. So there's nothing else fancy about this other than just the corn itself. So, and it's a study in how the corn affects the flavor of bourbon. So.
And you can't have it. You can only taste it.
We're recording. Start again.
Okay, so you just heard Alan's story about the Amanda Palmer corn, so heirloom corns. And after Alan shared some of that with us, what we have done at the Frankfurt Bourbon Society is work with Hunter Coffee, Walter Zausch there at Three Boys, and develop our own proprietary mash bills every year, and we distill those. And for a couple years in a row, we have actually used Amanda Palmer corn, which we source from Robert McDonald at Dancing Star Farms over in Imler, Pennsylvania. We have also used some malts from Sugar Creek Malts that Alan also mentioned earlier. Caleb Michalke up there. And then Alan has actually shared some of his wild yeasts with us as well that he's captured that we've used to distill some of our stuff there at Three Boys. And what's amazing is these heirloom corns, the flavor that comes through from them. I liken it to a modern chicken breast that you buy at the grocery store. It has been bred, so this chicken makes this giant breast. It can't fly anymore, and all it is a source of protein. I think modern corn has been bred to where all it is a source of carbohydrate and sugar to promote fermentation and get maximum yield on it. But it lacks the flavor that you get from these heirloom corns, and that is the difference we're tasting here. Mud fossils. Don't you be lying.
He's talking about corn.
Another thing you don't know about. Right. So it's, for example, the phenotype, we may want all the ears to mature at the same time. We may want the plant to be as close to uniform as possible, but the color is not as important to select as a trait, right? We're after flavor. So the color is important, but we want diversity of color is what we're after, right? So you want as much of that in there as what you can possibly get. And you also want flint and dent corn types together, and they can coexist in a population, because dent corn is what traditionally bourbon's made out of. Flint corn has got a lot more flavor to it. There's less fermentable sugars there, there's less starch available, but there's more flavor because it's more dense, basically. So
because that has way more flavor than a
So
corn.
here's a question. So we come down every year to Kentucky at the same weekend.
Right.
And this year, the corn's still all in the field.
Yeah.
The first year we were down here in 2019, all the corn was harvested, and it was a very dry year.
Yeah.
Do they process when they pull the corn out, does that matter how dry or how wet a year is?
Yeah, so they wouldn't, like this year, they didn't get it out down here until later in the year because it was a wet spring, right? And then whenever you store it, you want to below 14% moisture as well. So, and you can pull it out of the field a little bit wet and put it in a bin, and they can put dryers on it and all that stuff. But that also takes away from the flavor, etc. But the vast majority of corn that's used in bourbon is just yellow number 2 dent corn that just grows in the fields around here everywhere. You get it from your local co-op, etc.
So I have another question to add on to that too, Alan. So if you took Amanda Palmer, which is multicolored, so white kernels, orange, red, blue, multicolored. If you took all of the blue kernels, all of the red kernels, all of the white kernels, and distilled only those, would they have unique flavors?
Absolutely, yeah. And you could even take that to another step. So the purpose of having a landrace that's diverse like that genetically is that other people can get a hold of it, and they can actually select out their own strains of corn from it. So you could actually breed a blue corn, a red corn, a purple corn, a white corn, etc., and it would be different from any of the parents that went into it because it's going to be a combination still of all those different genetics. It's probably the most genetically diverse corn in North America at this point because, again, they had 150 different parents from all over the world in it. A lot of them weren't otherwise available other than through the USDA, through the ARS grant system. So there's a lot still to be done on the Amanda Palmer people to select out their own strains.
So Alan, have you done a blue corn barrel yet?
Not here, I haven't, but I've done blue corn in the past at home. Yeah.
So
totally different. I mean, just like in a tortilla chip.
Yeah.
Way different flavor
Kind of
profile
nutty.
than a
It's
corn.
kind of like an almondy sort of characteristic.
So what does it do when you do it in a mash bill?
It'll come off the same way. It's a direct line distillation. So Wood Hat Spirits has got a really good blue corn whiskey that they do.
So then that's a perfect thing for China 5 years ago. Send the corn over there so they can separate all the different corns and then send them back to
Really
you.
trying hard not to smile, Jeffrey. Really trying not to.
Watch this.
In Peru, we love Roxy. And the interesting thing about it is we know that they've been there for a long time because they're very unique selections. So the corn is what's called waxy corn or glutinous corn, and the only place that trick shows up is in China. The chickens that they had.
Say that again.
He's acknowledging right now. We'll give him a second.
Population,
For so long, they're actually missing a tailbone, so they don't have a
bag
tail.
of yellow, big bag of
So,
white.
and they lay 2 flash-eating eggs.
I just noticed that
And that's
they
all
all have
genetic
different
sex.
flavors that
And they
are
show
really
them in
stand
China.
out.
All right, you got it. Wow, that's fascinating.
I'm much more of a fan of the white.
God, don't you do it.
Bill just said it was fascinating.
All these players say yeah, you're fascinating.
Do what?
Please and clear. You're a social business.
Yeah.
Comes out there.
Yeah, right.
Probably. That's potentially, yes.
Can I be there?
Sure.
Hey, sign it on again. No, sign it again.
You take it.
There you go. Sign that.
Twice, and seen you once, and I bawled like a baby.
Let me tell you what. She's not standing there.
What about Martin? He's got a sign.
I saw her at a wild heart in 1984.
I just watched her close out monitor.
It was a real.
Would it be? I gotta get my phone. Would it be okay if I got?
Oh look, Alan's look how dark his.
Oh, we can. Oh, as long as you're.
Alan's just like keeping away from me.
It's a bad signal.
Not at all. They are definitely conversation starters.
They are.
I'm not even sure where
Remember racing Johnny Cash? Oh my
Yeah.
God. You know what?
This is the rare and elusive.
I
got
got
a sticker on my first car that said,
Take those golf.
Yeah.
It's right there, isn't it?
6 years. Why was it just 2 years? 4 years ago?
It's breeding season.
They had his music in a commercial.
Pink-nosed dolphin.
Yeah.
Here,
And they use your music
Kind of like a bat signal.
time on the planet. How bad is that?
Quickly coming out. And now he's actually going to put it.
and Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd had a lot of impact on my childhood.
Jeffrey,
yeah,
get out of the way. Take those golf on your barrel now.
What'd you do?
I expect
He drew a penis on his barrel.
Speaks to your soul.
He drew a penis on your barrel.
And I would expect that.
And I would
Johnny Cash, when he sang,
Hey, you already got one.
it's like I feel
You ain't got no room. You ain't got no room.
It's your super.
You ain't got no room.
We clean.
We're
That
making
is
a
so
coffee
awesome.
table out of it.
Okay, let's do it next one. Oh my God, that is.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah. If you say that in your room, we'll be fun.
Oh no.
Brooks understood what the hook was.
Oh God damn it. Alan's got a spot for me up here. I think Alan said he's got a spot back.
Oh, come on, man.
Stretch. You got this. You don't understand what Nash is.
Liquored up.
I think there's something so you should go stand up high. So I can
What? No, that's an idea.
What do you think I should do?
I want
I feel like there should be more names on there.
I have to really. I have to drink fast.
Catch this one from down here.
Are
you ready?
I'm
ready.
We're going for it. Get it. Wait, I'm going to get it.
It's running down my arm. What did we just tap, guys?
There you go. Get it. Get it there.
All right, one more.
One more. One more.
There we go.
One more.
Like, what just happened?
Perfecto.
Put that shit back in.
Wow. Holy cow, you smell that.
All right.
So where's the hammer?
Wow.
Oh, that's fucking.
All right. Now that is a. That is.
And did that mezcal.
Oh, and then we put those in there in April.
Wow.
In April? So how often do you taste it?
That's the first time. Look, it's the first freaking hole in the barrel, dude. You're taking this leaf for Jimmy. I mean, how many times you do that? You got a Vendome thief?
I do not. I have a Sean Stevens.
Okay.
Not nearly as fancy.
Yeah, but you know what? Maybe if this keeps going, I'll get you one. It wasn't that expensive. You said it was only like $350.
$3.90.
Oh my God! Look at how beautiful that is.
There's an apple.
We have a glass.
You have to
Oh
bring
wait, no.
You guys bring a glass with you out the.
Yeah, I got mine.
Shit. I gotta grab mine.
So you do the what? Hold on a second. Hold on, I get it. No, all of you. So come on. It's like I learned.
I mean, that's a small barrel. There's not much. We have to do small pours.
Yeah.
Soldered.
I mean, it's
But proof is stout on this one.
but a smoked
apple green. Look at it.
Ooh.
It's a really young Scotch barrel. Is what that
I used
is.
to have one like that. The Ghostbusters. Who drew that shit? Did you? You didn't draw that.
I drew that.
I just saw. Yeah, the pink dolphin you drew. That is not the equivalent of the Ghostbusters.
Here's what you do. You look up fucking coloring sheets.
There is
Put it
no,
up here,
no
and then
way
you take
you
the
drew
razor
that.
knife and you fucking outline that shit.
I'm calling bullshit on that. No, don't call bullshit. I saw the day you did that.
Yeah.
Who saw the pink dolphin?
Because it did those dolphins.
That is
Dude,
not
those
the equivalent of
Yeah,
that.
but he included a dick in it, so that's why there's no.
All right, so you guys are getting, this is.
Oh my
Thanks
God.
for the picture.
This is special. This is super special. So this is 2.5 53-gallon barrels, New American Oak, 4-year-old apple brandy that we blended together, and then went into this Isla barrel. So this is a smoked Isla Scotch barrel. It spent 19 years in Isla. I don't know which distillery. It is definitely not Lefroy. It's not real heavy. It's a little on the softer side. It is at 141 proof. So it's way up there.
So I'll take a double.
All right. And we're going to bottle it at that proof and do it as a hazmat and kind of do the Lefroy thing where it's like an extract, right? You add water to where you want it at. But that I know of, there's never been a commercial smoked apple brandy in the United States. So, and I used to do a lot of that at home with apple brandy, actually just smoking the apples themselves before I fermented them, or after fermentation and putting them into a gin basket. So this was a little different way of getting there, but I think that you guys will enjoy this.
You know, Booker thought the same thing.
Yeah.
He'll put it out at barrel strength and you water it down and then everybody
nobody
will.
does.
Nobody does now, so you're setting the precedent.
We're the only ones selling hazmat apple
We're
brandy.
just wasting the gear he gave you. That's all you do.
Water mostly made out of water anyway.
And so this. Oh wait, hold on. This here is my birthday present, and it was given to me by Roxy. It's a Vendome thief. I was like, what do I want? I mean, I have everything, and then I just thought,
Now
God,
you have everything.
I saw Randy Pressy have his thief, and I'm like, I want to have a thief.
You have thief envy.
What?
You have thief envy.
Yes, I had thief envy, and I no longer do. And this is seriously from like a girl. If she wants one of these, this is like having a dick. So that's what it is.
So wait a second. So
I promise you we don't want
in
one.
the same 24 hours, you have received a pink dolphin and a thief.
A dick-nosed dolphin. Yes, I have. Now this is it losing its virginity in this special barrel that Mr. Bishop has described. So let's
the bunghole you're saying.
Let's put it in.
Just a bunghole.
Put it right in that bunghole.
I'm an asshole. I admit that. So we'll let that sit there because I have so many glasses waiting. Oh, here. That's one thing I've learned. All right, there. You're gonna get that.
Is that 20 seconds?
You got that? You got a close up of that?
Can't believe it.
There we go. This is its virgin voyage. No, watch, right, Alan? Look, Alan, I let it sit there for a couple seconds, and then you put the finger over the hole, right? Here we go. Let's see what she brings out.
Come on, Beavis. Your glass first.
Amzie's the first.
No, this is Jeff's glass.
Whoa.
Who's next?
Here you go.
Okay, just so you guys
Who's
are
next?
aware, anything that was left on the table is straight ahead on this barrel as soon as you walk out. We just
I was
have
waiting for you to say
break the
hardcore
table
like it's
down
in the garbage.
And then
Right.
whenever you all are ready, I'll meet you up front at the tasting bar.
Wow.
I'll try a couple of other things that are tasting room only.
I'll start hurting them that way in a minute.
Okay.
Okay, we're low. We'll do it again. That was a.
I'm squeaking. Thank you. Wow, look how
Let me give you some shit. Oh man.
Wow. That is dark. It's good.
Wow.
Thank you, Alan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, brother.
Man, I put you in slow motion. That was a bad idea.
Who's next? I learned this from Hannah.
Slow motion.
Anybody else?
If you weren't here, that's 147
Just want to do that too? Anybody do that one too?
The
I have some more in here, so let's fill that baby up. And if anybody else wants some more,
Wow.
You finished with me.
wow, cool. So that's for anybody else who needs more. That was its virgin voyage.
She's a beauty.
Woo!
What an amazing beefing job you did
Okay,
there.
let me see that. That was freaking fun.
And that was the first glass out of your thieves.
That was the virgin run from the thief.
Now,
He stuck it in there dry. And, yeah.
That's what she said.
holy
He
shit!
should have been a little more of a gentleman when he threw it in there.
Exactly. Yeah. A little bit slower.
Holy shit! Right? Like, so that's brandy, right?
Apple brandy.
Apple brandy, yeah.
But aged in a barrel.
Aged in, I think, a couple of regular barrels first, and then put in here. And this used.
That's freaking
Scotch barrel.
insane.
That's delicious.
Wow. See, a lot of your
That's what happens when you have a master distiller, such as Alan Bishop, who maybe might be a master distiller,
or
maybe.
dare we say alchemist?
Yes, he is definitely an alchemist, where they understand distilling at the level of this insanity. Because, I mean, this is every bit whiskey, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and it's got a toasted flavor, it's got a apple flavor, it's got a vanilla. That is really special.
Like that? That's, that is my birthday barrel. Is what that is.
Oh, did you get the
still? You're beyond the hair of the dog, right?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
Because this was worthy of that. Good.
And you know what? You know what's great? First thing that touched was neither Scotch or bourbon.
No.
It was fucking apple brandy.
Right. Which competes with Scotch or bourbon.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you produced it the proper way.
I'm glad you guys like it.
So if you could just change the logo, the Scotchy, Appley, Brandy,
Sucky Dicky,
Whiskey Witchy, Bourbon Boys. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to throw.
I'm
gonna have to throw my log in the fire. Fuck that Scott Sucky Dicky. That's not going on there.
It just fucking did.
Yeah.
Like you see, like that, like you want to lick
Oh
that
my
barrel.
god! It's just like to
Do
have
what?
that.
Like you see that on the outside of the
Oh,
barrel.
yeah.
So
Just
I
like you
lick,
wanna
but
lick
have you
that
ever
barrel.
tasted that? It tasted good. I was in Distillery and I was like, they call it barrel candy, and I was like,
We used to do it at Copper and Kings all the time, me and Brandon, and we'd do a tour, and we'd tell people about barrel candy, and we'd be like, oh man, it's really good. And we would eat a little piece of it and just suck it up, right?
Yeah.
We'd be like, It's delicious. Just to see if you can get somebody else in the tour to pick it up and try it.
Yeah. Tell your classic tour story since she's recording with the famous person that eventually led you to the Spirit of French Lick. Right?
It helps, yeah.
Yeah.
There might have been a famous person on a tour at Copper's Kings one time from Louisville that I didn't realize was a famous person because I didn't recognize her because I was probably drunk doing tours late at night. So we would work all week, and then on Fridays, me and Brandon had to do tours, and we had to stay there until 10, 11 o'clock at night, especially when we first opened up. So we would take turns doing tours. And what we would do is we play a game called 2 for 1, so I weigh about twice what Brandon weighs. So I'd do 2 shots and he'd do 1 shot. And then we take turns doing tours back and forth, right? So it's late in the day, and I'm done. I just want to go home. And listen, if you're the person that's an asshole on my tour, I will call you out. Because I feel like I should, because you're being an asshole, right? Nobody else calls them out. I call people out on tour. So I'm on this tour, and there's this girl on her cell phone, and she is talking the whole fucking time. The whole time. And it's loud, and it's obnoxious, and it's shitty, and it's pissing me off. And so I went off on her, and I was like, get the fuck off my tour, right? And this becomes an issue later, because it turns out to be fucking Jennifer Lawrence.
And you know what? Seriously, that's my favorite freaking story ever. Because even further, then she became really famous, right?
Right.
And then now she just has completely justified you throwing her off her tour because everything she does and says at this point, she needs to be thrown off.
Come on now, don't be like so hating Jennifer Lawrence. Come on.
I have no idea.
I do. I know what.
I've never met her.
She could be your daughter. She could be your daughter. Wait, she is.
Wait, I would throw my daughter
Straight out the door.
Kidding. I would not. So we'll let that sit there because I have so many glasses waiting. Oh, here. That's one thing I've learned. All right, there. You're gonna get that.
Is that 20 seconds?
You got that? You got a close up of that?
Can't believe it.
Here we go. This is its virgin voyage. No, watch, right, Alan? Look, Alan, I let it sit there for a couple seconds, and then you put the finger over the hole, right? Here we go. Let's see what she brings out.
Come on, Beavis. Your glass first.
Amzie's the first.
No, this is Jeff's glass.
There you go. Go.
And action.
So Sinclair was the son of a textile mill owner from Chicago. He grew up in Greene County, Indiana. He moved to Washington County, Indiana as a young man with his first wife. He started a mill in Salem, Indiana, became a prominent businessman there. He owned the New Albany and Salem State Bank, a lot of property all around Washington County, Indiana, super prominent in the business community in Washington County, Indiana. And then late in the 1800s, he got interested in the French Lick via the New Albany and Salem Railroad, which he was an investor in. So this whole valley has always been kind of a place for resorts because of the mineral water here in the ground, right? So there's always been a hotel here. Originally, it's called the Baden Lick Hotel. It started in the 1850s, where the dome is now. Sinclair came here and he bought that, and he ran it for about a year before it burnt down, and he was going to get completely out of the business. But his daughter, Lillian, talked him into staying in the business. The one thing that Lee Sinclair loved more than business was his daughter. So he decided if he was going to stay in the business, he was going to build it back as the world's first fireproof hotel. And he wanted to be the Carlsbad of America. So Sinclair was a descendant of the Scottish Sinclairs. So he was very familiar with Europe. He traveled all through Europe. He had ties to the Rosicrucians, Knights Templar, Freemasonry, etc. He'd seen all that kind of stuff, been around. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of elements of that in that particular design. So that dome at the time, everybody said it couldn't be done. So he kept going from engineer to engineer until he found a kid that was in his 20s who had never actually built anything, who was able to actually engineer that as the largest freestanding dome in the world until the time the Superdome was built. He implemented the very first gaming room here in town. So a gaming room would be what you would think of now as a casino. And then by the 1920s, long after Sinclair's dead, there's a gentleman named Charles Edward Ballard who kind of takes over a lot of his business concerns. And Ballard ends up owning 8 of the 9 hotels that were here in the valley and all 9 of the casinos that were here in the valley. None of them were ever legal until the one that's here now. As a matter of fact, the Indiana State Police was partially put together to kind of bring this area to heel because this area was sort of, it's equidistance between, St. Louis, Indianapolis, Louisville, Cincinnati, etc. It was a great place for, especially the Chicago outfit, particularly Diamond Jim, who was in charge before Al Capone had him killed. This was kind of like a little hangout spot for them. And they used it to meet with a lot of the Kentucky distillers during Prohibition to move product illegally here in the Valley to different places throughout the United States. So Ballard actually ended up, I'm telling you this because there's going to be a Charles Edward Ballard whiskey as well. He ended up owning being a partial owner in all the circuses in the United States of America, except for Barnum and Bailey. He owned the 2 large farms outside of town here, Castle Knoll and what the hell's the name of that other one? Wilston.
Yeah.
That's where they would raise all the food and everything for the hotels and casinos. He had clubs in Michigan. He had clubs in Chicago. He had clubs out on the East Coast, down in Florida, one in Havana, Cuba. They literally set up a 400-gallon pot still right next to the railroad track, like within 20 feet of the railroad track. They'd pull the train up and load it full of moonshine and send it wherever they wanted to send it. Maddie Gladden was a housekeeper from Salem, Indiana for Lee Sinclair when she was about 15. One of Lee Sinclair's business partners had an affair with Maddie, and that obviously didn't set well with Lee, so they left. They went to Chattanooga, Tennessee. Sometime during that point, rumors start making it back to Salem that Maddie is the prominent owner of 2 brothels, one in Chattanooga and one in Nashville. She gets ready to move back home because her son is born with a degenerative disease called Bright's disease, so she's going to move back to Salem, take care of the kid, etc. When she decides to get out of the business, the rumor is that P.T. Barnum was one of her, here's another circus talk for you, one of her prominent lovers, and he gave her a retirement gift when she left. We don't know if she divorced the original husband or he died. She's married again when she's in Nashville. When she moves back to Salem, she's with a guy named Percy Gladden, who is kind of an early investor in like very early motion picture theaters, right? He owned multiple theaters, Bloomington, Salem, etc. They have a really tumultuous relationship. They start building this beautiful Queen Anne style house on Main Street in Salem. And of course, rumors start going around that she's going to build a new brothel, etc., which pisses off all the townswomen. As soon as she gets moved in, she opens a fucking brothel, right? That's exactly what she was doing. But it's not like a brothel like you think of it now. It was very much like, it was catered towards businessmen traveling between Chicago and Nashville, so it was catered to, like high-end clientele, right? So she had 3 girls that worked for her. All 3 of them had to be well-educated. All 3 had to know how to play the harpsichord, etc. Because even though things probably ended with sex at the end of the night, that wasn't the only thing that was going on at the house. It's a house of entertainment. Her and Percy end up getting divorced. A year later, Percy comes into town drunk, late at night, gets off the train, and he tries to break into her house through the back of the house. And she shoots him out of the bathroom window, through the windowsill. She shoots him underneath his left eye with a 38 caliber pistol.
Boom.
He ends up going to Louisville, getting emergency surgery. He lives through it. A year later, they're married again.
Southern Indiana mating ritual? Is that what it is?
Yes.
Okay.
And the house is still there, and it's historic. It's actually, we did some filming there as well. It's on YouTube, and you can find it. But if you were in the bathroom, you can actually see where she shot through that windowsill.
Wow.
In the house, underneath the steps, whenever the people who bought the house were restoring it, they found a safe that was built into the steps behind a hidden panel. And it actually had her original name on it, Maddie Schultz. And the second bottle, Maddie Gladden, is in there. First bottle went to her grave. The first 2 bottles of Lee Sinclair are actually in Lee Sinclair's mausoleum in Salem. We always make sure whoever we name things after, they get the first 3 bottles. But anyways, that safe, when they found it and they opened it up, it was still connected to an alarm that went off in her old bedroom. So if anybody had gotten in that safe while she was alive, she would have known. She runs the brothel for basically 6 or 7 years because there are literally no laws on the books in Salem at that time to say that you can't open a whorehouse. So they keep trying to like basically chip away at it over the years. But even after they got her out of the business, she was kind of rebellious about it. So she bought these 2 nude Grecian statues and put them in the front parlor window and kept the parlor windows open. And she told one of her friends that these women of Salem are so fancy, or if they think so highly of themselves, how could they complain about art like this, right? And then she also she had kind of the nicest horse and buggy in town. So whenever they would do a parade or anything, they'd have to go to her and ask to use the horse and buggy. She would always make sure that she was in the parade, and she'd have 2 of her girls with her. So the only actual picture we have of her is her dressed to the nines with one of her girls holding a parasail over top of her in the Centennial Parade. I made the joke many times, I've never seen a whore on parade, but I'd fucking go to that one. So,
do you have that picture?
Yeah, somewhere.
You send that to me, and I'll put that with this video.
Yeah, I'll find it. It's blurry. You can't see your face. I mean,
I don't need that. That picture is all I need.
Yeah, absolutely. William Dalton was the longest tenured distiller in Indiana history that we know of. He was the master distiller at the Daisy Spring Mill Distillery, now Spring Mill State Park, for 45 years, running on pot stills, open flame. So we wanted to name one after him. Obviously, he doesn't get enough credit. Solomon Scott was a partial owner of the Daisy Spring Mill Distillery, as well as the McCoy and Scott Distillery, which was in Bedford, Indiana, until about the mid-1880s. And literally, he remarked to a friend that he was tired of the government screwing him out of money. So he renounced all of his business partners and his ties to the legal business, and he came back here down the road to Paoli, Indiana, a place just east of town called the Bowen House was his house. And he went into moonshining, and he did that until he died in 1909. His daughter, Belle, and his son, Howard, took that over. And when Spanish flu hit, there's still people in this county whose families credit the Scots with keeping them alive from the Spanish flu, because the doctors wouldn't go visit anybody. They were afraid they'd get it, right? So they would make rye whiskey, and they'd flavor it with rock candy. They'd make rock and rye, and they would take it to those customers that had Spanish flu, and that's what they attribute helping get through Spanish flu. Sometime in the 1920s, Belle and Howard get arrested because they're running the house as an illegal tavern. Belle's on trial. The court is basically, the judge is going through all the charges. You know, you've been charged with illicitly producing alcohol, this and that and the other. She stands up and she says, well, you should know you bought most of it. And they literally dropped the charges, and she got out of it. So,
wow. So let's go to now.
Go to what?
Go to now.
Go to now what?
Spirit of French Lake.
Now,
You brought it up.
Oh.
I mean, seriously,
Right,
you're
so-
part of that whole history,
Go back to
right?
when. Now.
Yeah, so, yeah, we're the first distillery in the Black Forest of Southern Indiana, which is a region that was made up of Washington, Orange, Lawrence, Crawford, Harrison, and Perry counties, where between 1858 and 1914 there were 150 plus legal apple brandy distilleries. They were also making bourbon as well. We're the first one to be here since before Prohibition. Prohibition absolutely destroyed Indiana, and all the distilleries that were in Indiana, sort of like short of Seagram's and a couple that made it through Prohibition up until about the 1960s. We're the Old Clifty Apple Brandy is the first bottled and bond apple brandy to be made in this region since 1914.
All right.
Yeah. So we try to lean real heavily into all that stuff because people don't think of Indiana as a distilling state, but it is. And it's funny to me because they think we're on the wrong side of the magic fucking river, right?
Bullshit.
Like everybody just came to the southern bank, they
Bullshit.
stopped and they looked across, they said, I don't know what's over there, but I'm not going.
No, they didn't know there was limestone, right?
Right.
They're
Yeah.
the same limestone aquifers.
Well, yeah. And actually it's a higher quality limestone on this side of the river. So the Empire State Building was built with blocks just maybe 30 minutes that direction. So did you what? Yep. Amzie knows. That's where the rockologist comes in.
Is the Empire Quarry.
There you go.
There you go.
And a lot of the Washington, D.C. stuff was made out of the stone from here as well. So something you guys will like is mostly from Ohio, right? So Kentucky obviously gets the credit for bourbon. So something that a lot of people know is that bourbon doesn't show up in parlance until 1821. Bourbon, technically, for all intents and purposes, is a corn-based whiskey. All right? So we've got the same minerals in our water, same pH in our water. And something that a lot of people don't know is that early on, so let's say prior to the 1820s, if you're going to be making whiskey in southern Indiana or southern Ohio and you want to ship it downriver, if you're not south of New Albany, Indiana, you have to cross the river into Kentucky and ship out of Kentucky, or you'll lose everything at the Falls of Ohio because there were no locks in place at the time. So it could be that 25-30% of all that early bourbon may have been coming out of southern Indiana and southern Ohio. So,
Alan, can you also talk about Prohibition and some of the bonded warehouses in Kentucky that stored alcohol during Prohibition, and then what happened after Prohibition was over when they went to get their alcohol?
Yeah, so two of the families here in Orange County, and you guys actually saw a picture of one of the distilleries. I should have told you about it in there. That big wall hanging is actually the old McCoy distillery that was here in Orange County right after a tornado went through. But the McCoys and the Wolves, they were also related to Solomon Scott as well. Is that a fucking bee? Yeah. It was, wasn't it?
Of course.
Anyways, so the Wolves, for example, had been in business since 1818. They were 3 generations in when Prohibition hit. Them and the McCoys were told to take their barrels of apple brandy. They both had about 300 barrels apiece down to the APH Stitzel concentration warehouse. So if you're standing at Copper and Kings looking south, if you look off to the southwest, there's an empty lot. That's the old APH Stitzel distillery from before Stitzel Weller existed. So they took all their barrels down, they put them into storage with every intention of getting back into the business once Prohibition was over with. When they get out, every barrel is empty. Every one of them. Somebody had robbed everything that they had, and they never had the money to get back into it.
Did they rob the Kentucky distilleries as well?
Oh yeah, yeah. There was a lot of.
But did they have some left over?
Yes. Well, and you start looking into that history of those concentration warehouses and how that was all done. There's a reason Pennsylvania didn't come back, and Laura Fields talks about that a lot. Laura Petruzio. It was favoring a certain group of distillers for sure in Kentucky to come out on top. It also affected obviously the flavor of bourbon. So if you think of bourbon now, you think of Kentucky bourbon, there's a spectrum about this wide. It's basically 3 mash bills and column still distillation and maybe 2 yeast strains for the most part. The Wild Turkey yeast strain and then the Everett Beam yeast strain that ended up everywhere else. But if you were to go back to before Prohibition, the spectrum of bourbon is here. And if you were to go back to 1870, before the implementation of low rectification column still, the spectrum is here. Nothing we're doing here is new. None of it is.
I have a question for you, if I can back you up on one thing.
Yeah.
And I've had this explained to me before, and I guess because I don't recall all the details of it. The bonding, bottle and bond. Okay, let's say today, you, Alan Bishop, you want to do a bottle and bond.
Right.
Okay. How does that money change hands? Who pays who for what? How do you make that happen?
So you basically have to have enough bond insurance, okay, to cover everything that you have in storage.
Right. All right. Okay. So you're going to bond your warehouse.
Yep. In case anything happens to it, right? As far as the tax side of it goes, once it's bottled, it goes into like that cage we have in there.
Right.
That is our bonded area.
Okay.
The minute it comes out of that cage and goes out for distribution, not after it sells, the minute it comes out of that cage and goes out for distribution, you owe the tax.
It's taxed, but not until that. So that's a case of where you can have your work in process or your whip not being taxed until it leaves that cage.
Yep.
And that's the advantage to the distiller on that.
Right. And then Kentucky tried to do that VAT tax on barrels as well. I don't know if you guys heard about it. I think they got that defeated finally, but that would have hurt big.
Yeah, hurt Kentucky.
Yeah.
Insane.
So what you're saying, does that, like, did Michter's get screwed out of, because they were in Pennsylvania? I mean, they were
so they
big
survived
into
for
the whole,
a good little while, right?
right.
But Pennsylvania was a massive distilling state. As a matter of fact, the largest distillery in the United States was in Pennsylvania.
They made some amazing rye
What-
inside of West Virginia.
What really happened was what had been the Whiskey Trust at one point in time. They still existed. People don't know this. They basically became national distillers eventually, but they were very much controlling all this stuff going on with legislation. So you look at a lot of the beams, for example, and the beams will say, well, my grandpa moved from this place to this place because he didn't like the way they made whiskey, etc. There is some truth to that, but the truth of the matter is, most of them were working for what had been the Whiskey Trust out of New York, and they were going from distillery to distillery and getting all of their processes figured out from distillery to distillery. The Whiskey Trust was never able to really get a hand in the Pennsylvania businesses. They always stayed independent. And while that was a good thing, it's also what kind of killed them after Prohibition. So.
Yeah. And Prohibition, before Prohibition was something different than after Prohibition. There's no doubt, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, all the way down to rye whiskey bourbon was not the go-to. Bourbon was not the go-to before Prohibition. Rye whiskey was the drink in the United States. At that time.
I mean, I honestly think,
grain.
Yeah.
I think the 1964
rye grain withstood most all of the elements,
right?
Than any other.
But you have to admit,
anywhere.
So we live in Canton, Ohio, and if Hoover Vacuum would have come up with a resolution from Congress that all Hoover vacuums could only be made in Ohio or the United States, they wouldn't have been fucked by China.
Right.
So the best thing that 1964 resolution seriously saved the whiskey industry, because having bourbon only being made in the United States, because right now it would be being made in China if that never would have happened.
Right. Well, they are, just so you guys are aware, you may or may not be aware of this, but they're making bourbon in France now too, because France does not give a shit about that treaty whatsoever.
So can we start making some?
Yeah, but I will say straight up, fuck the French because they can keep their wine, and okay, that's fine. But there's no way I'm buying bourbon from France.
Well, there's no way. But also in relation to, like, let's say cognac or brandy in general. What about brandy in the U.S. and let's say Indiana before Prohibition?
Right. Well, I mean, that was what Southern Indiana was known for. So primarily the people that settled in the 6-county region were of German ancestry. If they didn't come directly from Germany, in particular, they were from the Black Forest region. Mm-hmm. So they had a long history of rye production and apple production.
And beer production.
Well, actually, these Germans
didn't like beer.
It wasn't a beer thing.
So north by where we were in Milwaukee, that's where the beer producers went, and then they went south to Indiana. Yep. They're like, fuck that shit.
If you drop into the next county up in Du Bois County, you'll run into a lot of that, and that was a later wave of Germans that came over then in the 1850s, 1860s. But this earlier wave, it was all brandy-based economy. I mean, all the way down to the churches around here. All the early churches were built off of liquor money.
So you mean, in other words, people were just fucking people? They just went where what they liked was?
Yeah. Well, they came here because it looks like the Black Forest of Germany. That's why they stopped here.
Yeah, they stopped here because they could do that because it was far enough south to not produce beer.
Right. Well, and yeah, exactly. So, and that's why they end up here. But and that's what it literally becomes such a big deal. Like early on. So, for example, in Washington County, where I'm from, there were 64 mills in Washington County. Every mill had a distillery. Every mill had a distillery. People think that mills were there because the settlers needed a place to grind their corn. Pretty much every household had a way to grind corn. Right. They did not need the mills to grind the corn. What they needed was the mills to work as an agricultural trade center, right? Where there's no money, you take your corn in. When you take your corn in, you're trading it on shares. And what you get back, it's usually an 8-share system. The miller takes 3 shares of the corn, you get the rest of it back, and you're usually going to get it back as whiskey. Some of it you're going to get back as cornmeal or brandy, obviously. You can trade back and forth. And then the miller doesn't need that extra corn because he's growing all kinds of corn as well, but he wants that corn to turn it into whiskey to ship it downstream because the only way to get money was to take it outside the community and then bring that money back into the community.
I mean, even now,
right? You had to ship it somewhere where they didn't readily have it available.
Exactly. You drive through Indiana, you drive through any place in the Midwest. It's like they want to sit there and say corn doesn't matter, but there's heirloom corn, there's fucking GMO corn. It's all about corn, and it's like corn goes into gas, corn goes into everything. It's corn has driven this country for ever since we got here.
Well, if bourbon is making one mistake, and I'm not from Kentucky, so I may get punched in the face over this, but if bourbon has made one mistake, it's the same mistake that it made before Prohibition, and that it's taken itself way too seriously. It's forgotten that it is corn whiskey. Everybody, I don't care what any of the big guys say, even the guys I like, everybody has made way too fucking much. And when that pigeon comes home to roost, it's going to hurt a lot of fucking people. For sure. So,
yeah, it's corn. I mean, even like you just do 100% corn whiskey, where it's 100% corn mash, and it's corn whiskey. It's still delicious. Corn is where the sugar comes from. Rye makes the spice. Wheat makes the spice. There's no doubt.
Those early settlers from Germany, did they make rye whiskey with their rye grain?
Right, so that's another interesting one. So here in southern Indiana in particular, that region of Germany that those Germans were from, when they made bourbon here, they made whiskey here, their flavoring grain was primarily wheat. They saved the rye here for rye bread because that's what they grew up with, and they used wheat for whiskey here.
So there's some Irish people here for the rye bread.
Yeah, a little bit. So it's mostly primarily German, but then you do have there was a nice little pocket of Welsh in the Black Forest region. There was a little Scots-Irish and a little Irish, not a ton, but there are places like in Washington County. There's a place called Henderson Park. It used to be called Old Mill Hollow, and there were about 8 distilleries there, and that was all Welsh-Irish.
So last but not least, what's growing here now? What is it? Corn? Is it wheat?
Corn and wheat. Rye does not do great here. That's one of the problems with Indiana. Even though they did use rye for bread, the big problem with Indiana is those old rye varieties that they would have brought here very early on. they're 7-8 feet tall, and they come on in June. And in June, what we get here in southern Indiana, we get storms that come through that last for about 5 or 10 minutes, but it's high winds and it's rain and it lays everything
And it
down.
fucks it up.
Yep, and destroys
Even the trees we had up in Ohio, we had trees just laying on the interstate. But yeah, you're right. But at the same time, why is that negative considering the rise of wheat whiskey, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, and you know, we have this goofy thing in Indiana, which is that we have an Indiana rye whiskey designation, which historically is cool, but also makes zero fucking sense, right? And it doesn't even have any teeth. There's not even a provision in there that like any amount of your grain has to be grown in the state. It's literally the dumbest thing. They did it because of MGP. That's why they did it. So.
Yes, of course. I mean, you have to admit, the MGP has really helped Indiana overall because they're so big and the whole world has recognized them. So it kind of like took the...
I'll take some wind out of their sails, though. So, and if you go there, they will tell you that the first distillery in Indiana was along Tanner's Creek in about 1802. There is no historical evidence of that whatsoever.
Where was the first?
The very first one was that we know of, that we can prove, was in the Black Forest of southern Indiana, just north of Salem, Indiana, out by what they call Delaney Creek Park, Delaney Creek Bottoms. A man named John Fleener in 1806, 1807.
Fleener. Okay. Yeah, that's out of their sales, but at the same time, what they've done for Indiana, it's like the whole time there's like everybody talks about it was Kentucky, and then there was MGP. They were always there, telling Kentucky, pretty much giving Kentucky the finger, right. And so anybody who says Indiana, when you started, there was an acceptance of Indiana.
Well, I don't know that it's an acceptance. It was more of you're from Indiana, you're probably buying from MGP, right?
Yeah,
and I do give credit to MGP for keeping the lights on for everybody else, without a doubt. That had more to do with the family that ran it at the time, obviously the Bronfmans, etc. But yeah, I mean, they obviously have their place in Indiana history.
Proud, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, to the extent that I think Minnick said it. That he was going. He said it in a video that he counts MGP as part of Kentucky, and I wrote back to him and I'm like, that's fine, we'll take fucking Louisville, because you know who works in Louisville? Hoosiers, or nobody fucking would. That's what. That's who.
There you go. All right, man. We're gonna.
All right.
Now mosaic floor and everything.
Scotchy Bourbon Boys
In the house.
In Indiana. There they go.
Again,
I think it's fabulous.
The restroom?
Fabulous.
This is my series of distillery restroom.
Oh, show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. Show me the way to the next whiskey bar. Oh, don't ask why. Oh, don't ask why. For if we don't find the next whiskey bar, I tell you we must die. I tell you we must die. I tell you we must die.
Hey, Scotchy Bourbon Boys fans, this is Alan Bishop, Indiana's alchemist of the Black Forest. So I'm tuning in here today to tell you all about the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute channel on YouTube. If you're at all interested in the art of distilling, whether it be home distilling or professional distilling, and the intense geekery that goes into that process, then check out the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute on YouTube. I promise you're going to learn something you didn't know before about the arts.